Actually, that's
too much
too
light.
bright. Hello, us. Welcome. Happy New Year. This is our first for this year. And see that reflection?
Yeah.
This is our first live stream for the year, so good to be back. We've got a great year planned. I did put out a message and ask for some feedback, and I got some good feedback, and we're definitely going to pay attention to it. One of the things we are going to do is make sure that we keep the sessions a little shorter and make sure that, try and find the time to do some editing, things like that. But anyway, today we've got an interesting subject. We're going to, over the next 12 months, we're going to do a series of sit-down subjects as well as technical subjects. And today we're just going to talk about the value of non-specific training in your training. In other words, how closely running, which is very common amongst fighters, how as part of their training routine. For example, how effective is running in your training program in terms of its transfer effect? What do you reckon?
It depends. I say it all the time, but it depends.
Indeed. Hello, yeah. Look, I have to say, through my career and through the career of many of my students, regular running was part of the program. And if you look back at most fight sports that are on their feet, running is very much a part of regular training. I think for me, I understand the idea of transfer and specificity. I understand that we're not training to be runners, just the same as sprinters don't train to do marathons and marathoners don't train to do swimming, and swimmers don't train to be kayakers. It's very important that there are aspects predominantly in your training that is very specific to your trainings. If you want to be a karate fighter, do karate. Having said that, there's something special about road work, in my opinion. Especially because in karate you're on your feet, and the time on your legs running, I think, gives you a very specific stamina in the legs. Every step you take is a plyometric step, so it strengthens your joints. And I'm talking about young men too, by the way. I don't for one second pretend that older people, particularly over 55, over 60, over 65, should be running regularly. Some do. They're runners though. They're not fighters. You get a lot of marathoners that just run, and they've never had to deal with the forces of impact that we deal with in karate.
That's exactly. Or to have the technical skills that they've got to continue to maintain whilst running over that period of time.
You brought up an interesting idea in that many of the fight sports are very, very technical. And you said that maybe because of that high level of technicality in training.
Yeah, so there's a concept, and this is just a theory, that the more technical the sport, the more you've got to do the sport to excel at it. The less technical the sport, the more you can do other type of training, i.e. running and different things, because you don't need the level of technical excellence that more technical sports require. It's just a theory. It's certainly not an absolute.
The other thing I'm thinking too is, a sprinter, for example, Charlie Francis and his sprinters train in a very specific way. They train purely for sprinting. Kayakers will 99% of the time train purely for kayaking. Because they're repetitive sports, it's the same movement over and over and over. So it's very easy to bring it into a very narrow channel of technical and somatic requirements.
That's right.
Karate, on the other hand, is very different. It requires a very broad range of somatic requirements. You need the cardiovascular endurance in terms of anaerobic and aerobic. You need explosiveness, muscular endurance. You need the long-term stamina in the legs. You need impact resilience.
Flexibility, speed.
You need every somatic and not just partially to help. You need every somatic because they are a necessary part of the high skill level. And I think in that respect, running therefore gives a really interesting foundation to what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so too. And the question too, when we talk about running, is what type of running are we talking about and at what frequency? Because you often see online people talking about, should you run or shouldn't run? And that's we live in a dualistic world, right? Good, mad, sad, bad, happy, glad, like you've talked about over the years. But it's not that simple. There's a lot of gray in training. And I'll just give you some of it. Are we talking about running distance? Are we talking about running intervals? Are we talking about running hill sprints? Are we talking about running stairs? Are we talking about sprints, as in with full recovery? These are all different, and they all have a different fartlek training, which is like a speed play, a Swedish word for speed play. And then are we doing them as sessions of themselves? Are we doing them within our weekly training? Are we doing them just as part of a training session? For example, you do your fitness rounds or your kumite, and then you go out and there's a hill near your dojo, and you go and run 5 hills after that, and then make it a circuit as part of your training, or they're individual sessions. And these all give us different adaptations. So I think it's a pretty, dull way to discriminate things. Like you say, the scalpel of discrimination has got to be strong, basically, with when you're making decisions. So I think there's absolute scope for running in combat sports. It's just a matter of how much and when are the only questions.
And let me just say, I don't think you should be taking advice off anyone who's never run.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You get a lot of people who are experts in their field. It's very easy to say that running is not specific to a particular sport, therefore you shouldn't run. If they've never run, they can never know that feeling, that the benefit it can give you. And I really think that there's something special in the running routine, especially you've only got to look at the incredible benefit that it gives in terms of your cardiovascular endurance. And I can tell you something now. I would challenge any fighter in the gym, except maybe for skipping, and how non-specific is skipping to fighting. It's almost like running. I would challenge any fighter at any level to take your heart rate to the same level that you can achieve in the right running program. Everyone knows the formula, 220 minus your age. It gives you an approximate calculation for your maximal heart rate. So if let's say I was 50, 220 minus my age would bring it down to 170. Theoretically, 170 is your maximal heart rate. But when I used to run, when I was 50, I was running marathons and as well as training. And I can 100% guarantee that every single time when I'd hit that long, hard hill on the way home, I would go way beyond my 170, and I'd be quite regularly hitting between 175 and 185. Okay? You can't do that on the bags. You can't do that on the mitts.
Yeah.
You just don't get the same level of moving your body weight up a hill or moving your
locomoting your body over the planet.
That's right.
It's a really unique thing. Yeah.
And I think for that reason, you should never dismiss running because it's a simple movement. So you can take your heart rate to an extremely high level without the technical requirements that Mitch was talking about before. You don't have to think about the technique. In fact, it can be a very relaxing break from that hard slog of technique and the focus of technique. I think that's very, very important. I used to find sometimes when I had, over the years, different jobs that were quite mentally a lot of pressure and quite demanding, that I'd actually get home sometimes at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night and I'd go for a run just to unwind my head. So that there's a lot to be said for that rhythmic motion, left and right, the bilateral motion of running, which has the effect of equilibrating the hemispheres of the brain. Some people say that concept of the left and right hemisphere and equilibration isn't real, but there's more and more scientific evidence to show that when you involve your brain with bilateral motion, you get a nice balancing effect of the two hemispheres. And that's something very powerful that you cannot ignore when it comes to running and training, because the intimidation level of training hard in a dojo with very hard, strong fighters all the time can't be denied. And if you can find a way to train to get away from that and let your brain rest a little bit, I think that's very underestimated as a facet of running.
Also, I completely agree. And the other thing, Shian, is exactly what you're talking about is the hormonal impact as well. To get the endorphins, to get the dopamine hit, the oxytocin, serotonin type things we get from running, being outdoors in nature, smelling the trees and flowers as you run past them, getting the sunlight, good morning, good afternoon to people. That's a huge benefit for our body as well, especially in today's world of social media and everything we do online. The other thing, Shian, I thought I'd mention is when we were live-in students, you gave us a training program to do. I just thought of this now. And the running program in it, we ran 5 or 6 days a week, I believe. But it was never the same day type of running. I remember the Mondays were, I think, 100-meter sprints, probably 10 of them or something like that. The Tuesday was more of a fartlek type run. I think Wednesday, and I'm going off the top of my head, I could be wrong, was 400s. 600s,
Yep.
That's what it was. Thursday, then it was back to hundreds, and then Friday was the same as Tuesday, and Saturday was the same as Wednesday.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Even with running, you had variation.
Variety.
Variety, that's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's very, very valuable. I think what we're discussing is really, really important to remember that don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. A lot of people will get on board, particularly people who have never run, and they'll get on board and they'll say, oh, you shouldn't run. It's not specific enough. We agree with that. We understand that the best thing you can do for fighting is to fight. We understand that the specificity concept is vital when it comes to particularly cardiovascular endurance. But there's something special about the rhythmic movement of locomoting, using Mitch's term, locomoting your body over the earth. It's very, very valuable.
There's a question here, Shian, sprints versus endurance running, which would you recommend long term to be physically better for the body and especially for heart health?
Well, there you go. I think they're both important. Yeah. Even when I was running marathons, I used to do fartlek work. So I'd sprint from one telegraph pole. Actually, I found the distance between one and the next was short. So I'd sprint from one and then the next and the next, and then I'd rest and then sprint and do that every now and then. When I was training for tournaments, however, I was doing a lot more sprint work than long distance. I would cap the distance I ran usually to 40 minutes. But I would do a lot of sprint work, even downhill sprints.
That's something, you had us doing. Please go on. That's great.
Yeah. So the concept of downhill sprints, when I say downhill, I'm not talking about 10% radiant. You just kill yourself on a bitumen road. I'm talking about a 2 or 3% drop. It's just slightly downhill. So what that does is gravity forces your body to move faster than it normally could on a flat surface. So what that does would theoretically encourage the fast twitch fibers to work more than they would normally.
That's right. It's called overspeed training from a sprint point of view. Underspeed training would be pulling a weight or a tie or a sled behind you. Overspeed training would be running downhill a little bit with an elastic band and pulling you forward with a harness.
It's very common. The underspeed training, I think, is too overdone.
Yeah, I agree entirely.
It's just like it's sexy and it's the flavor of the month for the last, however, it's something that people do too much.
Yes, and and that comes down to ground contact time. You want to spend whatever the average ground contact time is on a continuum for your sport or activity. You want to spend time either side of that, but more on the shorter side, generally speaking, a shorter ground contact, which means you want to do overspeed stuff a little bit more rather than the underspeed stuff, which lengthens ground contact and is less transferable to your sport.
So I was onto something back in the 90s.
Oh, absolutely you were, yeah.
There you go.
And the other thing too is just in relation to that question is a lot of people can get like for the heart health, doing long endurance and that is fantastic. But to sprint, your body has to be in a better state physically from a physical preparedness point of view to sprint than to run distance. I've had tears in my soleus before, my calves, and still been able to run distance, no worries, but I couldn't sprint.
So in fact, if I could interrupt you there, I remember, I don't know if it was my last marathon, I ran about 10 marathons in a row. And I remember one of them, I was tapering. So on one of the last days before the marathon, I was doing a short, I was sprinting out a little bit, and I tore my quad. And I ground to a halt, stopped, walked, rubbed it out a little bit, and then gradually built up a bit of speed, ran home, went to a therapist that I used to use. It was his magic fingers, I used to call him. Laurie Lawrence used to call him that too. Keith Maitland, shout out to Keith Maitland. If you're on the Gold Coast, you're looking for one of the best chiropractic therapeutic experts, Keith Maitland's your man. But anyway, I went to him one session. He did a treatment on me, and the next day I did the entire marathon, and I didn't feel a pull until about the 35K mark. Now, if I was competing in a tournament with heats and semi-quarterfinal in sprints, you can guarantee London to a brick I wouldn't have got through the heats.
Yep.
So that's a really good point in that you see a lot of elderly people running marathons, shuffling along, finding their rhythm, finding their speed, but you won't find them sprinting.
Yeah, and that's why I probably have a personal bias towards more sprinting-based activities for as long as possible through life, because it requires more of you physically, and you've got to look after your body a little bit more, and your capacity for everything is a little bit higher. It's just similar to martial arts. As people get old, like young guys will wrestle a lot, but as people get older, they might do jiu-jitsu off their back more, right? Because their body's probably easier for that.
What are you looking at me for?
No, it's just respecting seniority here.
Yeah, that's definitely.
It's definitely not you. We wrestled today. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's definitely the case in that certain activities won't lend themselves to aging, injured, tired legs. Okay, so running is definitely a young man's activity. I ran until I was 52, and then I injured myself running, and I haven't run since. But I really believe that through my fight career, and as I was going through the gradings, I used to find, for example, when I did my 40-man kumite, every other day I had a hill, steep hill down, and a steep hill up. It just was like this. And it used to take me about 2 minutes to run from up the top and down. So I treated each of those as a round of kumite, and I would do 40 of those.
Wow.
And to me, even if it was just psychological, I knew that I had done 42-minute hard rounds where I was getting, as I got lower and lower, just before it hit the curve up, I'd sprint out, and I'd get that fast sprint to get the momentum to go up. And that sort of training also has the psychological effect. I think we can never underestimate how important it is to look after your brain and your head.
I always found doing beat test sprints were complementary to karate. Absolutely, yeah. That's the shuttle run. If anyone doesn't know it, the shuttle test or the beat test, which is you set up cones 20 meters apart from each other. And then there's a beep. You can probably find it online, called it the beep test. And every beep you run 20 meters and wait for the next beep. And over time, it is levels and it goes up higher and higher and higher until you can't run to the cone before the beep. And that's what level you're at the moment. And that correlates with a certain VO2 max. And that's a popular running exercise done for sports people, popular field test.
It's a fantastic thing too. And it's very challenging. As those beeps get closer and closer together,
run faster.
You've got to run faster. But anyway, that's our viewpoint. Any other comments, Mitch?
No, just finally is to, like you said earlier, come to your own conclusions based on your own experiences with these things. Some people's legs, I can tell you straight up, they're really knock-kneed or super bow-legged, just the way they're genetically put together. They're probably not best to run a lot throughout their lives, just mechanically. So they're probably, if you have legs like that, martial art-wise, you're probably better off doing martial arts and a little bit of running and making sure your body's healthy. Other people are put together differently and can do a lot more. But I'd say come to your own conclusions based on your own experiences. Try distance running, try intervals, try sprints, try stairs, try hills. See how it works for you. Listen to your body's feedback. Do a little bit, then build it up over time and just see how you go with it. That's what I'd suggest. What about you?
Yep. I think you find a pattern that suits your own training, your own mentality. One thing that we've been doing at the dojo for more than 20 years now on the Saturday mornings, we have a tough set of stairs down at Currumbin. If you're a Gold Coaster, you know the Currumbin Alley stairs, and we run those. And it's a long haul up, 144 stairs, but 177 steps to get up because there's length between some of the stairs. Now, what the guys do is you can just do 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Most guys will work on getting between 7 to 10. But every time they come down, what we've done in the past is create a circuit. So they'll come down, do a short 40-meter sprint, do some step-ups on a platform, push-ups, sit-ups, squats, even some medicine ball, and then they go up. So you can mix it up as well and make that sprint work or that hard running work a part of a really nice training routine.
Yeah, and I think that's a brilliant way to bring running into your training. Plus, like you just say, Solso would say he loves training in big nature, right?
Yes.
And you're training in a beautiful part. You're outdoors, at beautiful beaches across the road. It's magic.
Yep, beautiful. Okay, we're going to wind it up. Let's just go through these measures first. Great benefit to cardio strength training is also for us in the pain injury situation. Yeah, for me. Yep. You know, there's different pain in the body, and sometimes different types of exercise can actually relieve psychologically as well as physically. That's very true. Speaking of wrestling and jiu-jitsu, I recommend Nomad Wrestling Grand Prix from Kazakhstan. No weight divisions where lightweights compete against heavyweights. Yeah. Soldad de Dios. I'll look that up. That looks like a lot of fun. Permanent toe and knee joint injuries have ended my sustained running for me. Tell me about it, Roland. I know exactly what. That's the other point. Good to bring that up, Roland. When you can't run, what I tend to do now is ride a bike.
Yeah.
You riding a bike can give you all kinds of different stamina as well as a psychological stamina. And boy, oh boy, I watch my heart rate. I wear a heart rate monitor and I can hit some max heart rate in that respect too. So psychologically for me at my age that I can, like Roland with the knees gone, that's a fantastic, a non-weight bearing now to get, you could paddle.
Deep water running, Shian's also good. You have a weighted buoyancy vest and you can run in the pool and do hard intervals.
Yeah.
I've done it with athletes over the time when they had some sort of injury or something, running sport athletes, and it's a great way to do things as well.
I have to say that you're probably right, but I found it so boring.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to sustain it. It wasn't boring. But what I do love over the years is rowing and cycling. They're great alternatives to the pounding on the knees. I found running on the beach, whether sprints or long distance running, was not good for the knee joints and ankles. The uneven ground. Yeah, you got to actually running on the beach. I'm pretty good at it because I've been running on the beach. We grew up on the beach, and as a nipper, as a young lifesaver, running on the beach from when I was 5, you learn that you have to run in a different way. The way you use your feet in sand running. So I hear what you're saying, but you have to take that into account. It's a little bit, it can be like running on cement.
Yeah, it can. And depending if the tide's high or low, when there's big tides, sometimes the sand's really hard, sometimes it's soft.
Yeah.
It's, you got to account for that.
Good on you. Thanks. And I noticed Sensei Mike said no weather reports this year. This is the first time he's ever come on without telling us whether it's raining or sunny in Western Australia. Okay. Good on you. Thanks, guys. Good to see you. Happy New Year. And we're looking forward to some really, really good videos this year. Thanks for coming along. And we hit the 4,000 mark. We reached 4,000 subscribers last week. So if every one of those 4,000 just tells 2,000 people, we're going to be killing it in no time. Yeah, good on you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much. And I look forward to seeing you. If you haven't subscribed, why not? There's most people in the world. You can't, but you're just one of the 4,000. One of the 4,000 that hasn't subscribed. But please do so. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I'm sure we're going to bring you some content that you really enjoy. It's not flashy, it's not sexy, and it's not clickbait. But I can guarantee you'll get some content out of it that will make a difference to your training. Us. See you next week. Us. Oh, we were in stream. There we go.